It was during the quarterly staff meeting when it happened, something so unexpected I could hardly process it in the moment. I was standing by the projector, halfway through my presentation on the Davis account, when Mr. Harrington approached to hand me the updated sales figures. The conference room was packed with colleagues, their faces illuminated by the blue glow of my slides. As he leaned in to pass me the folder, he paused, his shoulder brushing against mine. "I need to speak with you alone after this," he whispered, his breath warm against my ear. I nodded automatically, but when he added the next part, my fingers tightened around the folder. The words were so quiet no one else could have heard them, yet they seemed to echo in my head as I struggled to maintain my composure. The room suddenly felt too warm, too crowded. As I tried to continue speaking with steady hands, the office was nearly empty by 8:30 p.m., most of my colleagues having left hours ago. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across my desk as I hunched over my keyboard, determined to finish the Henderson proposal before morning. My eyes burned from staring at spreadsheets, but I was too close to finishing to stop now. I didn't hear him approach. One moment I was alone, lost in a maze of numbers and projections, and the next I felt a presence behind me, the subtle scent of expensive cologne, the slight shift in the air. Before I could turn, he leaned down, his breath warm against my ear. "I can't stop thinking about you, Rachel." His voice was low, intimate. "It's driving me crazy." I froze, my fingers hovering above the keyboard. James Porter, CEO of Porter & Associates, my direct supervisor, the man whose approval I'd been seeking for the past 18 months, had just whispered words that shattered every professional boundary between us. My name is Rachel Chen, 29 years old, and until that moment, I thought I understood exactly how the world worked. Work hard, stay focused, follow the rules, and success would follow. Simple, straightforward, predictable. But those 11 words changed everything, sending my carefully constructed reality tumbling like dominoes. "Mr. Porter," I managed, my voice barely audible as I swiveled my chair to face him. "I don't, James," he corrected gently. "We're alone, Rachel. You can call me James." He straightened up, adjusting his perfectly tailored suit jacket with a casual confidence that made my heart race. At 42, James Porter was everything a CEO should be: commanding, articulate, with salt and pepper hair and the kind of presence that demanded attention the moment he entered a room. I'd admired him professionally since my first day at the company, but this was something else entirely. "I shouldn't have said that," he continued, though his expression suggested no real regret. "But I'm tired of pretending. I see how you look at me when you think I don't notice." Did I look at him differently? I'd never thought so, had never allowed myself to think of him as anything but my boss. Yet heat rushed to my face at his words, betraying something I hadn't even admitted to myself. "I don't know what to say," I replied honestly, my mind racing to make sense of what was happening. He smiled, a slow curve of his lips that transformed his usually serious face. "You don't have to say anything tonight. Just think about it." He glanced at my computer screen. "The Henderson proposal looks good. Finish it tomorrow, it's late." With that, he turned and walked toward his office, leaving me staring after him, my heart pounding as if I'd just sprinted up 10 flights of stairs. Only when the door to his office closed did I release the breath I hadn't realized I was holding. What had just happened? And more importantly, what was I going to do about it? I gathered my things mechanically, shutting down my computer and collecting my jacket. My mind replayed his words on a loop, analyzing his tone, his expression, looking for any sign that I had misunderstood. But there was no mistaking his meaning. James Porter, my boss, had just confessed to having feelings for me. As I rode the elevator down to the parking garage, my reflection in the polished doors looked different somehow, flushed, eyes wide, something unfamiliar stirring behind them. Whatever happened next, I knew with absolute certainty that everything had changed, and the most unsettling part. Despite every professional instinct telling me to run in the opposite direction, a part of me, a part one barely recognized, couldn't wait to see what tomorrow would bring. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so I can continue bringing you more fascinating true stories like this one, and don't forget to watch this video till the end and like the video because this story is going to be incredibly interesting. Please hit the like button to show your support. I've always been the responsible one. The planner. The rule follower. Growing up with immigrant parents who sacrificed everything for my education had instilled in me an almost pathological need to succeed. I'd graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern, landed prestigious internships, and climbed steadily upward in my career, all according to plan. At 29, I was already a senior marketing analyst at one of the city's most respected firms. My 5-year plan was perfectly on track. Or at least it had been, until last night. As I dressed for work the morning after James's whispered confession, I scrutinized myself in the mirror with new eyes. My black pencil skirt and silk blouse were professional and understated, as always. My dark hair was pulled back in its usual sleek ponytail. Nothing about my appearance suggested a woman who inspired uncontrollable thoughts in her CEO. This is ridiculous, I muttered to my reflection. Nothing has changed. But that wasn't entirely true. Something had shifted inside me, a door opening to possibilities I had studiously avoided considering. 6 months ago, my 3-year relationship with David had ended with painful predictability. "You're married to your job, Rachel," he'd said during our final conversation. "There's no room for me." At the time, I'd been more annoyed than heartbroken, viewing his departure as further proof that relationships were distractions I couldn't afford in my carefully plotted rise to success. I'd thrown myself even more completely into work after that, using Porter and Associates' demanding environment as a refuge from my empty apartment and Friday nights alone. The more projects I took on, the less time I had to question whether I was actually happy or merely busy, and at the center of my work world was James Porter. He'd built the agency from nothing into one of the top marketing firms in the city through sheer force of will and undeniable talent. Unlike other executives I'd encountered, James never needed to raise his voice to command attention. His feedback, whether positive or negative, was always precise and thoughtful, never vague or personal. I'd respected him from day one. Admired him professionally. Sought his approval in ways that, if I was being honest, went beyond standard employee diligence. There had been moments when I'd found my gaze lingering on him during meetings, noticing the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, how he absent-mindedly twisted his wedding ring when deep in thought. His wedding ring. The gold band that had always represented a clear boundary I would never cross. I knew his marriage was troubled, everyone did. The whispered rumors of separation, the way he now showed up to company events alone, the mysterious 2-week absence last summer that HR had vaguely attributed to personal matters. Still, I'd never allowed myself to think of him as anything but unavailable. James had a reputation for mentoring young talent, particularly women. I'd always been proud to be among those he seemed to favor professionally, dismissing colleagues' occasional knowing looks as petty jealousy. Now I wondered if those glances had seen something I'd been blind to, or deliberately ignoring. As I gathered my keys and bag, my phone buzzed with a text, "Looking forward to your thoughts on the Henderson proposal." My office, 10 a.m. JP. Nothing unusual about the message. Nothing to suggest what had transpired between us. Yet my heart raced as if he'd sent something far more explicit. I texted back a professional "see you then" and headed out, wondering who I was becoming, the woman who had always followed every rule, or someone else entirely, someone willing to risk everything I'd built for something I'd never even known I wanted. Porter and Associates occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming downtown high-rise. From the outside, it was all glass and steel, modern, impressive, untouchable. Inside, it operated like a perfectly calibrated machine, each department feeding into the next with precision that James had engineered from day one. The 18th floor housed creative, designers, copywriters, and video producers whose spaces were adorned with mood boards and concept sketches. The 19th floor was account management, where client-facing teams operated in glass-walled conference rooms. And the 20th floor, where I worked, was strategy and analytics, the department James himself had led before becoming CEO. As I stepped off the elevator that morning, I felt like an actress walking onto a stage, hyper-aware of every glance, every interaction. Did they know? Could they somehow sense what had happened? I forced myself to move naturally, greeting colleagues with my usual smile as I made my way to my desk. Someone's here early, said Marcus, my closest work friend, dropping into the chair beside my desk with his usual lack of ceremony. Finishing the Henderson proposal? I nodded, grateful for the normal conversation. Just putting final touches on it. Meeting with Porter at 10. Marcus raised an eyebrow. One-on-one with the big boss? Moving up in the world, Chen. It's just a proposal review, I said, too quickly. Right. Marcus studied me for a moment too long. You okay? You seem tense. Before I could answer, Vanessa Wright, James's executive assistant, appeared beside my desk like a materialization. In her crisp white blouse and perfectly tailored black pants, she looked more like an executive than an assistant. Rachel, Mr. Porter asked me to get you these for your meeting. She handed me a folder, her expression professionally neutral though her eyes missed nothing. He also wanted me to confirm you're still available at 10. Yes, I'll be there, I replied, taking the folder without meeting her gaze. Vanessa had worked with James for 8 years, predating even his marriage. Her loyalty to him was legendary, as was her ability to detect and neutralize any perceived threat to his reputation or position. I'd always been careful to maintain a cordial relationship with her, recognizing her influence despite her official title. Wonderful, she said with a tight smile. He's been looking forward to your insights. As she walked away, Marcus leaned in. Ice Queen is in rare form today. What did you do to earn her special attention? I forced a laugh. Just doing my job. Well, watch your back. Rumor has it she's practically moved into Porter's guest room since his separation. This was news. They're actually separated? I thought that was just office gossip. Marcus shrugged. Caitlin from legal processed the paperwork herself. Official as of last month, apparently. Not that he's advertising it. The information shifted something inside me, removing an obstacle I hadn't wanted to acknowledge. If James was officially separated, but no. Office relationships were explicitly forbidden by company policy, especially between executives and their reports. My career, everything I'd worked for, would be at risk. As if summoned by my thoughts, Catherine from HR appeared, making her morning rounds. She paused at my desk, coffee in hand. Rachel, how's that Henderson proposal coming? I hear you've been putting in a lot of late nights. Her tone was casual, but there was something in her eyes, a watchfulness that made me wonder how much she knew about last night. Almost finished, I said, keeping my voice even. Just need Porter's final approval. Catherine nodded slowly. You've been working closely with him lately. Make sure you're maintaining appropriate professional boundaries. We've had issues before. The warning was not subtle. As she walked away, Marcus whistled low. What was that about? No idea, I lied, my stomach nodding. As 10 o'clock approached, I gathered my materials, hyper-aware of every eye that followed me across the office floor. The path to James's corner office had never felt so exposed. Vanessa watched me approach, her expression unreadable. He's ready for you, she said, gesturing to the closed door. Take all the time you need. Something in her tone made it clear, she knew. Maybe not exactly what had happened, but enough to see me as competition. A threat. I took a deep breath and knocked on James's door, wondering if I was walking into a professional meeting or something else entirely, and which one I was actually hoping for. James sat behind his desk when I entered, his expression professionally neutral as he gestured toward the chair across from him. Nothing in his demeanor suggested a man who had whispered intimate confessions into my ear the night before. Rachel, good morning. Close the door, please. I did as instructed, the soft click of the latch sounding unnaturally loud in the quiet office. My pulse raced as I took the seat, clutching my laptop like a shield. The Henderson proposal, I began, desperate to establish a professional tone. I've incorporated the changes we discussed and, we'll get to that, he interrupted, his voice gentle but firm. I think we should address what happened last night first. The direct approach caught me off guard. I'd prepared for pretense, for dancing around the subject through layers of professional discussion. His bluntness left me momentarily speechless. I put you in an uncomfortable position, he continued when I didn't respond. That wasn't fair, and I apologize. It's fine, I said automatically, then caught myself. I mean, it was unexpected. He smiled slightly. But not unwelcome? Heat rushed to my face. The question hung between us, transforming the familiar office into something more intimate. Outside, the city sprawled beneath a clear blue sky, business as usual, while inside this glass-walled space, the air seemed charged with possibilities I'd never allowed myself to consider. I don't know what to say, I admitted, echoing my response from the night before. James rose from his chair and moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back. His silhouette against the bright light created a striking figure, powerful, contemplative. I've been fighting this for months, he said, still facing the window. Telling myself it was inappropriate, unprofessional. That I was imagining something that wasn't there. He turned to face me. But I don't think I was, Rachel. The way he said my name sent a shiver through me. I respect you too much to play games, he continued. So I'll be direct. There's something between us, something beyond a professional relationship. I felt it from the first strategy meeting you led. The question is, what do we do about it? The practical part of my brain screamed warnings about HR policies, power dynamics, and career suicide. But another part, a part one barely recognized, couldn't stop watching the way his expression softened when he looked at me. We work together, I said, stating the obvious. You're my boss. Yes. He nodded, acknowledging the complication. That makes things complex. Complex, I repeated, feeling the inadequacy of the word. It's more than complex. It's professionally dangerous, for both of us, but especially for me. James moved closer, leaning against the desk just feet from where I sat. The distance between us felt both vast and infinitesimal. I'd never put your career at risk, he said quietly. That's why I've kept my distance until now. What changed? I asked, curious despite my reservations. Life's too short for regrets. His eyes held mine. My marriage is over, has been for longer than I care to admit. And I'm tired of pretending I don't feel what I feel when I'm around you. The confession hung in the air between us, impossible to ignore or take back. I should have been shocked, should have been planning my exit strategy, reminding him of company policies and professional boundaries. Instead, I felt something uncoil inside me, tension I'd been carrying for months without fully recognizing it. I should go, I said, rising from my chair, needing distance to think clearly. The Henderson proposal, he reminded me, his tone shifting back to professional. Right. I nodded, grateful for the redirection. I'll email you the final draft. As I reached the door, his voice stopped me. Rachel. I turned back, my hand on the knob. Think about what I said. Please. I nodded once, not trusting myself to speak, and slipped out of his office into the relative safety of the hallway, where I could finally breathe again. 3 days passed in a strange limbo. On the surface, everything was normal: meetings, client calls, the constant hum of office life. James and I maintained strictly professional interactions, discussing the Henderson proposal in team meetings with no hint of our private conversation, but beneath that professional veneer, something had shifted. I'd catch him watching me during presentations, his gaze lingering a moment too long. In return, I found myself increasingly aware of his presence, the sound of his voice from across the room, the subtle scent of his cologne when he passed my desk. By Friday, the unspoken tension was becoming unbearable. When an email from James appeared in my inbox requesting my help with the Westfield pitch over the weekend, I stared at it for a full 5 minutes before responding. Working alone with him, away from the watchful eyes of colleagues, seemed both terrifying and thrilling. Big plans this weekend? Marcus asked, passing by my desk as I gathered my things Friday evening. Just work, I replied, trying to sound casual. Porter needs help with the Westfield pitch. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Weekend work with the CEO? Interesting career development strategy. It's not like that, I said too quickly. Sure. He didn't look convinced. Just be careful, Ratch. Office romances never end well, especially with someone who signs your paycheck. I forced a laugh. You have a wild imagination. But as I rode the elevator to the executive floor Saturday morning, my stomach nodded with anticipation. The office was eerily quiet, most of the lights dimmed for the weekend. Only a soft glow emanated from James's office at the end of the hall. He looked different in casual clothes, dark jeans and a gray Henley that made him appear younger, more approachable. Without his usual suit armor, I could see the athletic build that was typically hidden beneath tailored jackets. You came, he said, smiling as I entered. I wasn't sure you would. The Westfield account is important, I replied, clinging to professional pretenses. Yes, it is. He gestured to the documents spread across his desk. I've been reviewing their market position. Come look at this. I moved beside him, acutely aware of his proximity as we bent over the reports together. Our shoulders touched as he pointed out key findings, the contact sending tiny sparks of awareness through me. His voice dropped slightly as he explained his strategy ideas, creating an intimate bubble that excluded the outside world. What do you think? He asked, turning toward me. We were standing too close enough that I could see the faint stubble on his jaw, smell the subtle notes of his cologne mingled with coffee. A normal colleague would step back, create professional distance. I didn't move. I think the sustainability angle is promising, I said, proud of how steady my voice sounded despite my racing heart. Their competitors are all focused on luxury positioning, but Westfield has this amazing environmental record they're not leveraging. James smiled, a genuine expression of pleasure at my insight. Exactly what I was thinking. You see it too. The way he said it, like we shared a special understanding, made me feel both seen and valued in ways that transcended professional appreciation. This was the dangerous territory I'd been afraid of, the blurring of lines between admiration and attraction. We make a good team, he said softly. Before I could respond, his hand brushed against mine as he reached for another report. The touch lingered, his fingers resting lightly against my skin. It was a test, a question without words. I should have pulled away. Instead, I turned my hand slightly, an almost imperceptible movement that allowed his fingers to slide between mine. For a moment, we stood frozen in this tentative connection, neither advancing nor retreating. Rachel, he said, my name barely a whisper. The ringing of his cell phone shattered the moment. He stepped back, releasing my hand to answer the call, and I used the interruption to retreat to safer ground, moving to the other side of his desk while he spoke in clipped sentences to someone about delivery timelines. When he hung up, the spell had broken. We spent the next 3 hours working diligently on the pitch, maintaining a careful distance, our earlier moment of connection unacknowledged but impossible to forget. The Westfield presentation was scheduled for Thursday afternoon. All week, James and I maintained a careful professional distance in the office, our weekend almost moment hanging between us, unacknowledged but impossible to forget. If others noticed the tension, they didn't comment, though Vanessa's gaze followed me more frequently, her expression increasingly suspicious. Thursday's presentation went flawlessly. Our strategy resonated with the Westfield executives, particularly the sustainability angle I developed. As the clients filed out, James addressed the team. Excellent work, everyone. Rachel, could you stay to discuss next steps? The others departed quickly, leaving us alone in the conference room. James closed the door, then turned to me with a smile that transformed his usually serious face. They loved your ideas, he said. The sustainability angle was brilliant. It was a team effort, I replied, gathering my notes to hide the pleasure his praise gave me. No, it was your vision. I just helped refine it. He moved closer, leaning against the conference table. We work well together. The statement carried weight beyond its simple meaning. I nodded, unsure how to respond. Have dinner with me tonight, he said suddenly. Not here, not as colleagues. Just you and me, somewhere we can talk. The invitation hung in the air between us, explicit, unmistakable, impossible to interpret as anything but personal. This was the moment of decision I'd been both dreading and anticipating. "James, we can't," I said, though the words felt hollow even as I spoke them. "You know the company policies as well as I do." "I do." He nodded. "I also know that life is short and finding someone who makes you feel alive is rare." He stepped closer, his eyes holding mine. "Tell me you don't feel this too, and I'll never mention it again." I opened my mouth to deny it, to say what I should say, but the lie wouldn't come. "It doesn't matter what I feel," I said instead. "The professional risks can be managed," he interrupted gently. "I would never put your career in jeopardy. We can be discreet." Discreet. I repeated the word, testing it. "You mean sneaking around, lying to colleagues, hoping no one notices?" "I mean giving ourselves a chance to explore what this is before bringing the world into it." He reached for my hand, his touch sending electricity up my arm. "Just dinner, Rachel. A conversation away from this place. That's all I'm asking for tonight." I looked down at our joined hands, at the point of connection that felt both dangerous and right. Everything I'd worked for, my career, my reputation, my carefully constructed professional identity, all of it was at risk. But the thought of walking away, of never knowing what might be possible between us, suddenly seemed like the greater loss. "Where?" I asked, my voice barely audible. His smile was like sunrise breaking through clouds. "There's a small Italian place in Brookfield. Private, quiet. No one from the office would see us there." The reality of what I was agreeing to hit me: secretive meetings, constant vigilance, the possibility of discovery always looming. Yet even knowing the risks, I couldn't make myself say no. "Okay," I said finally. "Just dinner. Just to talk." He squeezed my hand gently before releasing it. "I'll text you the address." 8 o'clock? I nodded, already imagining the elaborate lie I would need to tell Marcus about my evening plans. As I gathered my things to leave, James called my name once more. I turned back to find him watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For being brave enough to see where this leads." Walking back to my desk felt like moving through a dream. I had just agreed to a date with my boss, crossing a line I had always sworn I would never approach. Yet instead of regret or panic, all I felt was a strange, buoyant anticipation. For the first time in my meticulously planned life, I was stepping into the unknown, and despite every rational voice screaming warnings in my head, I couldn't wait to see what happened next. I changed outfits 3 times before leaving my apartment, oscillating between options that felt too casual, too formal, or too obviously date-like. I finally settled on a burgundy wrap dress, professional enough to maintain the fiction that this was a work dinner, but elegant enough to acknowledge it wasn't. As I applied my makeup, I stared at my reflection, searching for the responsible woman who had always played by the rules. Who was this person preparing for a secret dinner with her boss? What happened to the Rachel Chen who had 5-year plans and clear professional boundaries? "This is a mistake," I told my reflection. "You're risking everything you've worked for." Yet I continued applying mascara, adding a touch more lipstick than I would for a normal workday. I rehearsed rational arguments on the drive to the restaurant. I would explain to James why this couldn't happen, why we needed to maintain a strictly professional relationship, why the risks outweighed any potential reward. By the time I pulled into the parking lot of the small Italian restaurant in Brookfield, 30 minutes from our office in a neighborhood where we were unlikely to encounter colleagues, I had convinced myself I was coming here to end something before it began. That conviction lasted until I saw him waiting at a corner table, dressed in charcoal slacks and a blue button-down that brought out his eyes. He stood when he saw me, his smile transforming his face from the serious CEO I knew to someone else entirely, someone warm, approachable, and disarmingly human. "You came," he said as I reached the table, relief evident in his voice. "I said I would." I settled into my chair, unfolding the napkin to give my nervous hands something to do. "I know, but I half expected you to change your mind." James studied me across the table. "You look beautiful." The compliment, delivered with such straightforward sincerity, scattered my carefully prepared speech. "Thank you," I managed, taking a sip of water to compose myself. The waitress appeared to take our drink orders, wine for me, scotch for him. As she walked away, an awkward silence descended. Outside the familiar context of work, I suddenly didn't know how to act with this man I saw every day. "This is strange, isn't it?" he said, reading my discomfort. "Being here, like this." I nodded, grateful for his directness. "Very strange." "We can talk about work if that's easier," he offered. "No," I said quickly. "If we're doing this, whatever this is, we should at least be honest about it. This isn't a work dinner." James smiled. "No, it's not." "Then we should talk about how incredibly risky this is," I said, finding my voice. "You're my boss. There are power dynamics we can't just ignore. Not to mention company policies explicitly forbidding relationships between managers and subordinates." "All valid concerns," he acknowledged. "I've thought about them too." "And?" I pressed. "And I still wanted to have dinner with you." He leaned forward slightly. "Rachel, I'm not taking this lightly. I know the professional risks, especially for you. If you want to leave right now, I'll understand." The offer was genuine. It was my chance to exit gracefully, to return to the safe, predictable life I'd always planned. Instead, I heard myself ask, "Why me?" James considered the question. "Because you challenge me. You see problems differently, you're not afraid to push back when I'm wrong. And," he paused, "because when you walk into a room, it's like someone turned on all the lights." The unexpected poetry from this usually pragmatic man left me momentarily speechless. Our drinks arrived, breaking the tension, and as we ordered dinner, the conversation shifted to safer topics: books we'd read, places we'd traveled, the circuitous paths that had led us to our careers. With each passing minute, the professional titles that separated us, CEO and analyst, boss and employee, seemed to recede, revealing two people with surprising commonalities beneath. By dessert, I'd laughed more than I had in months, and the knot of anxiety in my chest had loosened, replaced by something warmer and more dangerous. When James reached across the table to touch my hand, I didn't pull away. After dinner, James suggested a walk. The restaurant was near a small park, and despite the evening chill, I agreed. We strolled side by side, close but not touching, as if still negotiating the physical boundaries between us. "I had a nice time tonight," I said, breaking a comfortable silence. "Nice enough to do it again?" There was vulnerability in the question that I hadn't expected from him. I hesitated, weighing honesty against caution. "Yes," I admitted. "But it doesn't change the complications." "I know." He stopped walking, turning to face me. "Rachel, I want to be clear about something. Whatever happens between us, your position at Porter is secure. Your career matters to me." "You can't guarantee that," I said softly. "If this became public, it won't," he assured me. "I would never do anything to hurt you professionally." Standing there in the dim park lighting, away from the office and its hierarchies, it was easy to believe him. Easy to forget all the reasons this was dangerous. His nearness made it hard to think clearly, to remember why I'd been so determined to end this before it began. "I should get home," I said, though I made no move to leave. James nodded, but instead of turning back toward the parking lot, he reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face. The simple contact sent electricity through me. "May I kiss you?" he asked, his voice low. The question caught me off guard. In its deference, its request for permission, lay an acknowledgement of the power imbalance between us, and an attempt to equalize it. This wasn't a boss commanding, this was a man asking. I should have said no. Should have remembered every HR policy I'd ever read, every cautionary tale about workplace relationships. Instead, I nodded, a slight movement that changed everything. He leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away. His lips met mine with surprising gentleness, a question rather than a demand. When I didn't retreat, when instead I moved closer, my hands rising to his shoulders, the kiss deepened, igniting something I'd kept carefully banked for too long. His arms encircled me, drawing me against him as the world narrowed to this moment, this connection that felt both forbidden and inevitable. I lost track of time, of place, of all the reasons this shouldn't be happening. When we finally broke apart, both breathing harder, reality began to seep back in. I had just kissed my boss in a public park. Crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I should really go, I whispered, this time meaning it. James nodded, releasing me reluctantly. I'll walk you to your car. We made our way back to the restaurant parking lot in silence, my mind reeling with what had just happened. At my car, he opened the door for me, then paused. When can I see you again? He asked. Outside of work, I mean. The question demanded a decision. Was this a momentary lapse in judgment or the beginning of something more? My practical side screamed warnings about career suicide and HR violations. But another part of me, a part one barely recognized, couldn't imagine walking away. Saturday? I suggested. My place. I'll cook dinner. His smile was worth every risk. I'd like that. One more brief kiss and I was in my car, driving home in a daze. My lips still tingled from his touch, my body humming with an energy I hadn't felt in years. Despite every rational argument against it, I couldn't bring myself to regret what had happened. As I pulled into my apartment complex, my phone buzzed with a text from James. Thank you for tonight. For taking a chance on this. On US.US. The word settled into my chest, both thrilling and terrifying. There was an us now, secret, complicated, potentially disastrous, but undeniably real. The next morning at work was surreal. I sat in the weekly strategy meeting across from James, watching him lead the discussion about Q4 projections as if nothing had changed. Only the brief glance he sent my way when I entered, a glance that lingered just a second too long, suggested that last night had been real. I focused on my notes, contributing when necessary but careful not to engage with him directly. The memory of his lips on mine made it difficult to maintain my professional composure, and I was acutely aware of every colleague around the table, wondering if they could somehow sense the shift between us. Rachel, can you walk the team through the Henderson results? James asked, his tone perfectly neutral. I nodded, launching into an analysis of our latest campaign metrics, proud of how steady my voice remained despite the way my pulse jumped when he said my name. This was the new reality, maintaining two separate identities that could never intersect. Rachel the consummate professional and Rachel who had kissed her boss in a darkened park. After the meeting, Marcus fell into step beside me as we returned to our desks. You look different today, he observed, studying my face. Did something happen? Just had a good night's sleep, I lied, avoiding his gaze. He didn't sound convinced. Nothing to do with your mysterious disappearance after work yesterday? You never replied to my text about happy hour. I'd completely forgotten about Marcus's invitation, too preoccupied with preparing for dinner with James. Sorry, I was busy. Busy, he repeated, raising an eyebrow. With what? Or should I ask, with whom? Don't be ridiculous, I said, forcing a laugh. I was just catching up on some reading. Before he could press further, my phone buzzed with an email from James. Need your input on the Harrington proposal. My office, 2 p.m., just a normal work request, nothing unusual in its wording. Yet knowing what lay beneath the professional veneer made my heart race. I replied with a simple "will be there" before tucking my phone away. Porter again? Marcus asked, nodding at my phone. You've been spending a lot of time in his office lately. Just work, I said, too quickly. Marcus's expression shifted to something more serious. Rachel, be careful. Office relationships are complicated enough. When there's a power differential, it's not like that, I interrupted, the denial sounding hollow even to my ears. It never starts out like that, he said quietly. Just, watch yourself, okay? I nodded, eager to end the conversation before I gave anything away. The warning rattled me more than I wanted to admit. Marcus wasn't wrong about the risks, I knew them intellectually, had recited them to myself repeatedly. Yet in the moment with James, all those rational concerns seemed distant, theoretical compared to the immediate reality of how I felt when I was with him. At 2 p.m., I knocked on James's office door, pulse racing with equal parts anticipation and anxiety. "Come in," he called. I entered, carefully closing the door behind me. James sat behind his desk, professional and composed. Vanessa's desk was visible through the glass wall, her watchful presence a reminder of the need for caution. "The Harrington proposal," I said, keeping my voice businesslike as I approached his desk. "Yes." He gestured to the chair across from him. As I sat, he added quietly, "I just wanted to see you." The simple admission warmed me, though I kept my expression neutral. "Not very professional, Mr. Porter." A smile played at the corners of his mouth. "No, definitely not." He glanced at his computer screen, then back at me. "Saturday seems very far away." "James," I warned, nodding slightly toward the glass walls. He nodded, understanding the need for discretion. "Let's actually look at the Harrington proposal then. For appearance's sake." We spent the next 30 minutes reviewing marketing strategies, our conversation perfectly professional. But beneath the business discussion ran an undercurrent of awareness, of shared secrets and anticipation. When our fingers brushed as he handed me a report, the brief contact sent electricity through me. As I stood to leave, he said quietly, "I'll text you later." I nodded, slipping out of his office and past Vanessa, who watched me with thinly veiled suspicion. The secrecy was already becoming exhausting, yet there was something undeniably thrilling about it too, having this private connection that existed separately from our professional lives. That night, James texted me, counting the hours until Saturday. I smiled at my phone, typing back, "Me too," and despite all the complications, all the risks, I realized it was true. Whatever this was, this fragile, secret thing between us, I wasn't ready to let it go. 1 month into our secret relationship, I realized I was falling in love with James. It wasn't just the excitement of forbidden romance or the thrill of our stolen moments. It was the way he listened when I spoke, as if my thoughts were valuable treasures. The way he'd text me random observations throughout his day, wanting to share his life with me. The way he remembered small details, that I preferred dark chocolate to milk, that my mother called every Sunday, that I couldn't sleep if I drank coffee after 4 p.m. We had developed a careful system for our relationship. At work, we maintained strict professionalism, no lingering glances, no unnecessary meetings, nothing that might trigger suspicion. After hours and on weekends, we met at my apartment or at restaurants far from the office where we wouldn't encounter colleagues. One rainy Saturday evening, as we sat on my couch sharing wine and takeout, I asked the question that had been nagging at me. "Why did your marriage end?" James set down his glass, his expression turning thoughtful. "Not for the reason most people assume." "Which is?" "That I cheated." He gave a humorless laugh. "That's the rumor at the office, isn't it? That I had an affair with someone from the company?" I nodded, embarrassed to admit I'd heard those whispers too. "The truth is much more mundane," he continued. "We grew apart. Amanda built her legal career while I built Porter and Associates, and somewhere along the way, we stopped seeing each other. Stopped talking about anything meaningful. We became roommates, business partners raising children together, but not lovers. Not even friends, really." There was pain in his voice, not for a love lost but for years wasted in emotional disconnect. "We tried counseling," he added. "For a year. But in the end, we both realized we were holding on to something that didn't exist anymore." I moved closer, resting my head on his shoulder. "Thank you for telling me." "What about David?" he asked. "Marcus mentioned your ex once." "David wanted someone who would prioritize him above everything else," I said. "My career was always going to be an issue." James's arm tightened around me. "His loss." I smiled, feeling understood in a way I never had with David. James didn't view my ambition as a threat or an inconvenience. He respected it, encouraged it, saw it as something we shared rather than something that came between us. "I've been thinking," James said after a comfortable silence. "The Bradford conference is in Boston next month. I need to attend, and we'll need someone from strategy there too." I sat up, instantly understanding what he was suggesting. A business trip together. He nodded. 3 days, separate rooms officially, but time away from here, I finished for him. Away from hiding. Exactly. He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his touch gentle. I want to walk down a street holding your hand. Take you to dinner without scanning the restaurant for colleagues first. Wake up with you without worrying about who might see my car in your parking lot. The idea was tantalizingly appealing, a temporary escape from the constant vigilance our relationship required. But underneath that initial attraction lurked a more complicated reality. Would it technically be a business trip? Or are you suggesting I go as, what? Your girlfriend? Both, James admitted. I need someone from strategy there, and you're the best choice professionally. But yes, I also want time with you away from all this. If I go as an employee and you're, whatever I am, isn't that crossing another line? Using company resources for personal reasons? James sighed. When you put it that way, it sounds more questionable than I intended. It's complicated, I said, voicing the understatement of the year. This whole situation is complicated. It doesn't have to be, he replied, his eyes holding mine. We could stop hiding. My heart stuttered. You mean, go public with our relationship? Disclose it to HR, face whatever consequences come. The suggestion hung in the air between us, momentous and terrifying. Part of me longed for exactly that, to step out of the shadows, to claim this relationship openly. But the rational part of my brain saw all the potential fallout. James, his fingers touched my lips gently. Don't answer now. Just think about it. He kissed me then, and for a while, the future and its complications receded, replaced by the immediate certainty of how right we felt together, however wrong the world might judge us to be. Rachel, can I borrow you for the client call with Langford? Marcus asked, stopping by my desk Tuesday morning. Sure, what time? Now, they're already on the line. Porter was supposed to lead, but he's not here yet. I followed Marcus to the conference room, suppressing the smile that threatened at the mention of James. We'd been together until nearly 1 a.m., no wonder he was running late. The call went smoothly despite James's absence. I was presenting the final slides when the conference room door opened and he walked in, looking impeccably put together despite his late arrival. Only the slight shadows under his eyes hinted at our late night. Ms. Chen, it appears you have everything under control, he said, his tone professionally neutral as he took a seat at the far end of the table. I continued the presentation, hyper-aware of his presence but careful not to look at him too directly. When the call ended, Marcus leaned over. Porter couldn't take his eyes off you, he whispered. Should I be concerned? My heart skipped. What? About the presentation, Marcus clarified, though his expression suggested he meant something else. Did we miss anything? No, we covered everything, I replied, gathering my notes quickly. As everyone filed out, James called, Rachel, a moment about the Langford timeline? Marcus raised an eyebrow but left without comment, closing the door behind him. The moment we were alone, James's professional mask slipped. I'm sorry I was late, he said, moving closer. I overslept. Wonder why, I replied, allowing a small smile. Worth it. He glanced toward the glass wall, confirming no one was watching, then quickly squeezed my hand. Dinner tonight? I nodded. My place. 7? Perfect. He stepped back, resuming his CEO demeanor as voices approached the conference room. Send me those Langford projections by end of day. Yes, sir, I replied, playing along with the professional charade. The door opened to reveal Vanessa, her gaze moving suspiciously between us. Mr. Porter, your 11 o'clock is waiting. Back at my desk, I found Marcus watching me with unconcealed curiosity. What was that about? Just the Langford timeline, I said, focusing on my computer screen. Right. He leaned against my desk. Rachel, I've known you for 2 years. You're a terrible liar. I looked up, panic fluttering in my chest. What are you talking about? You and Porter. He lowered his voice. There's something going on, isn't there? That's ridiculous, I insisted, but my burning cheeks betrayed me. Marcus sighed. Be careful. That's all I'm saying. Office politics can get ugly, and you're playing with fire. His warning followed me throughout the day, amplifying my awareness of the glances and whispers that seemed more frequent lately. Had we been too careless? Had someone seen something, or was my guilty conscience making me paranoid? That evening as I prepared dinner, my doorbell rang an hour before James was due to arrive. Assuming he was early, I opened the door without checking, and found Catherine from HR standing in my hallway. Catherine, I stammered. This is unexpected. May I come in? She asked, her expression unreadable. My mind raced as I stepped aside. Had someone reported us? Was I about to be fired? I won't take much of your time, Catherine said, scanning my apartment with calm assessment. I'm visiting key team members to discuss some organizational changes. Relief flooded me. This was a work visit, nothing more. We're restructuring the strategy department, she continued. You're being considered for a senior position that would report directly to the executive team, bypassing middle management. That's wonderful, I managed, struggling to focus with James's arrival looming. It would mean working more closely with the CEO, Catherine added, studying my reaction. Something in her tone made my skin prickle. Was this a test? I'm always happy to contribute however I can, I said carefully. Catherine nodded, checking her watch. I should go. We'll discuss details tomorrow. As she reached the door, she turned back. One more thing, Rachel. The company takes its ethics policies very seriously. Particularly regarding relationships between management and staff. My blood froze. I'm aware of the policies. Good, she said. Because violating them would make this promotion impossible. And potentially end your career at Porter altogether. After she left, I sank onto my couch, hands trembling. I should call James, cancel dinner, reconsider everything. But before I could reach for my phone, another knock came at the door. James stood there, bottle of wine in hand, smiling until he saw my expression. What's wrong? He asked, stepping inside. Catherine was just here, I said, the words tumbling out. Talking about a promotion and ethics policies. James, I think she knows. Slow down, James said, guiding me to the couch. Tell me exactly what Catherine said. I recounted the conversation, the implied warning, the uncomfortable feeling of being watched. As I spoke, James's expression grew increasingly troubled. This is my fault, he said finally. I've been careless. We both have, I corrected, though his acceptance of responsibility touched me. The question is, what do we do now? James paced my small living room, wine forgotten on the coffee table. We have options. We could cool things off temporarily, be more cautious until the scrutiny passes. Or. He stopped pacing, his gaze meeting mine. Or we could disclose our relationship officially. Get ahead of this before someone else exposes us. The thought sent panic through me. Disclosure means consequences, James. For both of us, but especially for me. Not necessarily, he argued. The policy doesn't prohibit relationships entirely, it requires disclosure and recusal from decisions affecting each other. In theory, I countered. In reality, I'll be labeled as the woman who slept with the boss. Every achievement, every promotion will be questioned. The promotion Catherine mentioned? Gone. James sat beside me, taking my hand. I would never let that happen. You might not be able to stop it. We sat in tense silence, the weight of our decision pressing down on us. Finally, James spoke. There's another option. I could step down as CEO. I stared at him, stunned. What? I've been considering it anyway, he said. The company has grown beyond my original vision. The board has been pushing for new leadership to take Porter and Associates to the next level. You're talking about leaving the company you built because of me? The enormity of the suggestion left me breathless. Because of us, he corrected. And not just for that reason. It might be the right time regardless. I shook my head, overwhelmed. That's too much responsibility to put on this relationship. We've only been together a month. A month that's changed everything for me, James said softly. Rachel, I've never felt this way about anyone. Not even Amanda, even in the beginning. His confession hung in the air between us, both beautiful and terrifying. Part of me wanted to throw caution to the wind, to believe our connection was worth any sacrifice. But another part, the practical, ambitious part that had driven me my entire career, couldn't accept being the reason James walked away from his life's work. We need time, I said finally. To think this through carefully. Rushing into either disclosure or your resignation would be a mistake. James nodded. You're right. But we also need to be more careful. Catherine's visit wasn't a coincidence. Someone must suspect something, I agreed. Vanessa watches me like a hawk. It's not just Vanessa, James admitted. Amanda called me yesterday, asking about the Asian woman from work I've been seeing. My blood ran cold. How would she know? I don't know. His expression was grim. But if Catherine and Amanda both suspect, others do too. The carefully constructed bubble we'd built around our relationship was collapsing. The outside world was closing in, forcing decisions we weren't ready to make. What if we took some time apart? I suggested, the words painful but necessary. Just at work. Keep things strictly professional, no private meetings, no stolen moments. See if the scrutiny dies down. James looked as though I'd suggested cutting off his arm. For how long? 2 weeks, I said. Until after the quarterly board meeting. Then we reassess. He was quiet for a long moment before nodding reluctantly. If that's what you need. It's what we need, I corrected gently. To protect both of us. James pulled me closer, his arms encircling me with a possessiveness that made my heart ache. 2 weeks of pretending you're just another employee is going to be torture. I know, I whispered against his chest. But it's better than losing everything. As we held each other in my dimly lit living room, I wondered if this was the beginning of the end or merely a temporary setback. The rational part of me knew that relationships born in secrecy rarely survived exposure to the light. But my heart, which had never been rational where James was concerned, refused to accept that possibility. Tomorrow we would return to being CEO and analyst, maintaining careful distance under watchful eyes. But tonight, we still had these precious hours together, hours that felt increasingly numbered as the forces aligned against us grew stronger. Our 2-week cooling-off period was agony. I saw James daily in meetings and passing in hallways, but we maintained a careful professional distance. No private conversations, no lingering glances, nothing that might feed the rumors already circulating. We communicated through brief, work-related texts, each message stripped of the warmth that had characterized our exchanges before. The strategy seemed to be working. The scrutiny eased slightly, Catherine's watchful eyes turning elsewhere, Vanessa's suspicion fading to her usual cool efficiency. Even Marcus stopped making pointed comments about my relationship with the CEO. But as the pressure from outside diminished, something else began to shift. In our efforts to appear professional, a real distance was growing between us. The connection that had felt so powerful, so inevitable, was fraying under the strain of constant vigilance and separation. By the time the quarterly board meeting arrived, marking the end of our self-imposed exile, I wasn't sure what remained of us to salvage. James texted that evening, my place? We need to talk. Those 4 words, we need to talk, sent a chill through me, but I replied with a simple I'll be there at 8 and tried to prepare myself for whatever came next. James's downtown penthouse reflected his personality, elegant but understated, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. Tonight, those windows showcased a gathering storm, dark clouds rolling across the skyline as I stepped inside. Thank you for coming, he said, formal in a way that made my heart sink. Of course. I stood awkwardly in his living room, unsure whether to sit or stand, whether we were still lovers or already transitioning to something else. These 2 weeks have given me time to think, James began, his expression serious. About us. About what's realistic. Me too, I admitted, wrapping my arms around myself protectively. The board meeting today was enlightening, he continued. They're watching me closely. There are concerns about my leadership, questions about my personal life affecting my judgment. Because of us? Not explicitly. But there are whispers. Amanda apparently told a board member's wife about her suspicions. The reality of our situation pressed down like a physical weight. This wasn't just about HR policies or office gossip anymore. James's position, everything he'd built, was at risk. So what are you saying? I asked, though I already knew. I'm saying we need to be realistic, he replied, not quite meeting my eyes. About what's possible right now. You want to end this, I said, the words like glass in my throat. No, he said quickly, looking up. I want to protect both of us while we figure out a sustainable path forward. That sounds like corporate speak for taking a break, I observed, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. James sighed, running a hand through his hair, the gesture I'd once found so endearing now just a sign of his discomfort. Rachel, please. Try to understand my position. I do understand, I said quietly. Your career comes first. I always knew it would. That's not fair, he protested. I offered to step down, remember? And I said that was too much pressure for such a new relationship, I countered. But offering when you knew I wouldn't accept is easy. Following through would be different. The accusation hung in the air between us, harsh but not entirely untrue. James moved to the window, staring out at the gathering storm. I love you, he said finally, his back still to me. I've never said that to you before, but it's true. This isn't about my career coming first. It's about finding a way for us both to have what we want without destroying each other in the process. The declaration should have moved me, should have been a moment of connection. Instead, it felt like a goodbye wrapped in pretty words. I love you too, I admitted, tears threatening. But sometimes love isn't enough, is it? He turned then, his expression pained. I'm just asking for time. For both of us to think clearly without the constant fear of discovery. And if I can't give you that time? If I need more than stolen moments and uncertain futures? The question hung between us like a challenge. Outside, lightning illuminated the sky, the storm finally breaking over the city. Neither of us saw Vanessa enter the executive dining room. We'd been careful for weeks since our conversation at James's apartment, maintaining strictly professional interactions at work while trying to figure out what remained of our relationship in private moments. But that morning, thinking we were alone in the rarely used private dining room, we'd allowed ourselves a moment of honesty. I miss you, James had said, his voice low as we reviewed the Langford report. This distance between us is killing me. I'd glanced up, my professional resolve weakening at the raw emotion in his eyes. I miss you too. His hand had covered mine, just for a moment, a brief touch that meant everything after weeks of careful separation. That's when we heard the sharp intake of breath from the doorway. Vanessa stood frozen, a portfolio clutched to her chest, her eyes fixed on our joined hands. Before either of us could speak, she turned and hurried away, the door swinging shut behind her. James, I said, panic rising. She saw us. He nodded grimly. I should talk to her. And say what? Ask her to keep our secret? She's been waiting for proof for months. The rest of the day passed in excruciating slowness, each minute ticking by as we waited for the inevitable fallout. Would Vanessa go to HR? To the board? The uncertainty was almost worse than actual consequences. By 5 p.m., nothing had happened. No summons from Catherine, no emergency board meeting, nothing to suggest our secret had spread beyond Vanessa. As the office emptied for the day, I began to hope, foolishly, it turned out, that perhaps Vanessa had decided to keep what she'd seen to herself. Then my computer pinged with a company-wide email. Subject, Ethics Violation Report, James Porter and Rachel Chin. The message was brief but devastating. A formal notice that an ethics complaint had been filed regarding an inappropriate relationship between the CEO and a junior employee. No names were explicitly mentioned in the body, but the subject line left no doubt who was being accused. The email outlined the investigation process and reminded all employees of the company's policies regarding workplace relationships. My phone rang almost immediately. James, breaking our rule about personal calls during work hours. My office, now, he said, his voice tight with contained fury. When I arrived, he was pacing, tie loosened, hair disheveled from running his hands through it repeatedly. It wasn't Vanessa, he said without preamble. What? How do you know? Because she just came to warn me that Catherine was about to send the email. She thought I deserved a heads up. He laughed bitterly. Apparently, she's known about us for months but kept it to herself. The complaint came from someone else. Who? Marcus. The name hit me like a physical blow. Marcus? But he's my friend. A friend who was passed over for the promotion you received last week, James said grimly. A promotion he thinks you got because of your relationship with me. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Marcus's warnings about office relationships had never been out of concern for me. They were building a case, gathering evidence for the moment when it could benefit him most. What happens now? I asked, sinking into a chair as the reality of our situation settled over me. HR investigation. Interviews with both of us, separately. Review of communications, meetings, decisions I've made regarding your position. James sighed heavily. It's going to get ugly, Rachel. My career here is over, I said, the realization both painful and freeing. No matter what the investigation finds, I'll always be the woman who slept with her boss. James knelt before me, taking my hands in his. I'm so sorry. I never wanted this for you. Looking into his eyes, I saw the truth we'd both been avoiding for weeks. Our relationship had been doomed from the start, not by lack of feeling, but by the unequal power dynamic that no amount of love could fully overcome. We knew the risks, I said softly. Outside his office, I could see people gathered in small groups, glancing our way, whispers spreading like wildfire. Our private relationship had become public spectacle, exactly as I'd feared from the beginning. I should go, I said, rising shakily. We shouldn't be seen together right now. As I turned to leave, James called after me. Rachel, this doesn't change how I feel about you. I paused at the door, not looking back. Maybe it should. The investigation was as thorough as it was humiliating. Every email, every meeting, every decision regarding my position was scrutinized for evidence of favoritism. Catherine interviewed me for 3 hours, her questions probing not just the timeline of our relationship but its intimate details. Did the relationship begin before or after your promotion to senior analyst? After, I said firmly. And I earned that promotion based on my work. Did James Porter ever imply that your advancement at the company was connected to your personal relationship? Never. Did you feel pressured to enter into this relationship due to the power differential between you? That question gave me pause. Had I felt pressured? No, James had always been respectful, had always given me the space to choose. But would I have made the same choice if he hadn't been my boss, if my career hadn't hung in the balance? I couldn't honestly say. The relationship was consensual, I finally answered. But the context made it complicated. In the end, the investigation concluded what I'd known from the beginning. Our relationship violated company policy, regardless of intentions or consent. The consequences were predictably uneven. James received a formal reprimand from the board and was required to complete ethics training. I was offered a transfer to the Seattle office, a face-saving alternative to termination that still felt like exile. I declined the transfer and submitted my resignation instead. James came to my apartment the night before my last day, his face drawn with the strain of the past weeks. You don't have to leave, he said, standing awkwardly in my living room. The company values your work. This will blow over. We both know it won't, I replied. The promotion I worked years for will always be tainted by suspicion. Every achievement questioned. I need a fresh start somewhere my relationship history isn't common knowledge. And us? He asked, the question hanging between us. I took a deep breath. I think we both need time apart. To figure out who we are outside of this situation. It wasn't what he wanted to hear, but James nodded, accepting my decision with the grace that had drawn me to him from the beginning. I want you to know, he said, that despite how it ended, I don't regret a single moment with you. I smiled sadly. I'm not sure I can say the same. Not yet. 6 months later, I was settled in a new city with a new job at a smaller firm where I could rebuild my reputation based on my work alone. The distance and time had given me perspective I'd lacked in the heat of the scandal. James and I still spoke occasionally, careful, cautious conversations that acknowledged the feelings that remained between us without making promises neither of us could keep. He had stepped down as CEO, transitioning to a chairman role that removed him from day-to-day management. A choice he insisted was his own, though I wondered if the board had pushed for it after our scandal. One evening, my phone rang with his familiar number. I'm going to be in town next week, he said. For a conference. Would you have dinner with me? The question took me back to the beginning, to another dinner invitation that had changed everything. But this time, we were on equal footing. No power imbalance, no professional complications. Just two people with a complicated history and possibly a future. Yes, I said after a moment. I'd like that. I didn't know what would happen when I saw James again. Whether the feelings that had led us down such a difficult path had survived our separation. Whether we could build something healthier, more balanced than before. But for the first time since that night he'd whispered in my ear, I felt ready to find out. The woman who had been shocked by her boss's confession was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, wiser, and unafraid to chart her own course, regardless of where it might lead.